The planet was quiet. Its skies were pale and empty, and the land stretched like a sea of broken stone. Once, long ago, a mighty city had stood here. Towers of glass and silver reached toward the stars, and wide bridges connected homes and halls of beauty. Now, everything was gone. What remained was dust, shattered walls, and ruins half buried under the weight of centuries. Far above the broken surface, a human ship descended slowly through the thin air. Its engines hummed as it came to rest on a flat piece of land near the ruins. From the ship's doors, a group of explorers stepped out, their boots sinking into the sand. They were part of a survey team sent to explore forgotten worlds and search for resources, relics, or anything of value. Among the team was a man named Darren. He was not a commander, not even a soldier. He was an engineer, someone who fixed machines and made sure ships stayed alive. Darren did not seek glory or wealth. He liked quiet work, studying things that others ignored. While the others looked at the ruins with sharp eyes, searching for treasures or weapons, Darren stood still and listened to the wind. The ruins were strange. They looked old, yet some parts seemed untouched by time. The tall stones were carved with designs that spoke of a culture proud and strong. But there was also sadness in the air, a silence too deep to be natural. It was as if the city itself mourned. One of the explorers, a man with a heavy pack, pointed at his scanner. "Only debris," he said. "Old power lines, nothing useful." The team leader nodded and ordered everyone to move on. They wanted quick results and easy finds. But Darren did not move. His scanner, small and cracked, showed a faint signal. It was weak, buried deep under the ground. Most would think it was nothing. But Darren had seen signals like this before, and they were never just noise. "I think there's something below," he said quietly. The leader frowned. "It's a waste of time. We have other sites to check." Still, Darren stayed. He could not explain why, but he felt drawn to the ruins. He placed his hand on a fallen wall and felt a faint vibration. It was almost like a heartbeat. He began to move deeper into the city, stepping over broken stones and through shadows. The others left him behind. They had no patience for mysteries. But Darren welcomed them. To him, mysteries were more important than treasures. As the sky dimmed, Darren entered a large hall. The roof was half gone, but the floor led down into darkness. He turned on his small light and followed the path, deeper and deeper underground. Dust filled the air, and the silence grew heavier with every step. Then he heard it. It was not clear at first, just a faint sound, almost like wind through cracks. But then it came again. A soft, broken voice. A sound of weeping. Darren froze. His light shook in his hand. He listened carefully. The sound was not an echo, not a trick of his mind. It was real. Somewhere below, someone was crying. His heart raced. How could anyone be alive down here? This city had been dead for centuries. Yet the cry was there, weak but filled with sorrow. He followed the sound. His steps were slow but steady, guided by the faint voice. At last, he entered a chamber hidden beneath the ground. The walls glowed faintly with blue light, powered by ancient energy. And in the center of the chamber stood a crystal structure, tall and clear as glass. Inside the crystal, a figure was curled like a child in sleep. A woman, with silver hair and delicate features, dressed in robes that shimmered faintly even in the dim light. Her eyes were closed, but tears slid slowly down her cheeks, shining as they fell. Darren's breath caught. The sound of weeping came from her. Though trapped in the crystal, she cried as if her heart had never rested. He stepped closer, pressing his hand against the surface. The crystal was cold, but beneath it he could feel a pulse, a slow rhythm of life. She was alive. The scanner on his wrist blinked with readings it could not explain. Energy swirled around the crystal, old yet strong. This was no prison. It was a stasis chamber, keeping her alive for countless years. Darren stared in silence. He could not look away. Who was she? Why had she been left here, forgotten under the ruins of her world? And why, even in her long sleep, did she still cry? For the first time in his life, Darren felt something beyond curiosity. He felt the weight of another's sorrow pressing against his heart. The city above was dead, its people gone. But here, beneath stone and dust, one soul remained. She was not treasure. She was not a relic. She was someone who had suffered alone for longer than he could imagine. And Darren knew one thing with certainty. He could not leave her here. The chamber glowed with faint blue light, casting long shadows across the walls. Darren stood before the crystal, his hand pressed against its cold surface. Inside, the woman lay curled as if trapped in a dream, her silver hair floating softly around her face. Her lips trembled, and again he heard the faint sound, soft weeping, broken yet alive. He leaned closer, his breath fogging against the crystal. "You're alive," he whispered, though she could not hear him. The thought made his chest tighten. For centuries, this planet had been forgotten. For centuries, she had been buried in silence. Yet somehow, she was still here. The scanner on his wrist blinked wildly, confused by the strange energy. Numbers flickered and vanished, unable to read the chamber's true power. Darren ignored the machine. Machines could only explain so much. What mattered was the human truth before him: someone was suffering, even in their long sleep. He studied the structure carefully. It was not simply a tomb. The energy flow was too precise, like veins carrying life through the crystal. The chamber was designed to preserve, not destroy. Somewhere deep within, ancient technology still worked tirelessly, protecting her body and spirit. "Who are you?" Darren asked quietly. His voice sounded too loud in the stillness, echoing back to him like a question the ruins themselves wanted answered. For a moment, he thought he imagined it. But then, faint and fragile, a voice answered. Why did you come?" Darren froze. His heart jumped in his chest. He looked around the chamber, but there was no one else. The sound was not carried by air. It came from within the crystal itself. Her lips had not moved, yet her sorrowful voice reached him. He stepped back in shock, but the voice came again. "No one ever comes. No one hears me." Darren swallowed hard. His throat was dry, and words stumbled out of him. "I heard you." The crystal pulsed faintly, a shimmer running across its surface like ripples on water. Her form shifted slightly, as if stirred by his reply. Slowly, her eyes opened. They were pale, like silver touched by moonlight, and they fixed on him with fragile hope. For a long moment, neither spoke. Darren felt the weight of her gaze, heavy with centuries of sorrow. She blinked slowly, and a tear slid down her cheek inside the crystal. "You are not like the others," she whispered. "Others?" Darren asked. Her voice shook, as if each word cost her strength. "So many years. They came, searching for power. They touched the crystal, but they did not listen. They left me here." Darren clenched his fists. He could picture it easily: explorers, scavengers, soldiers. They would have seen only strange energy or possible weapons. They would not have cared for the weeping voice of a lonely soul. "I'm not here for power," he said firmly. "I just wanted to know why someone was crying." Her eyes softened at his words, as though something fragile inside her had been touched. For centuries, she had cried in silence, never believed, never freed. And now, for the first time, someone had answered her. The chamber shivered faintly. The blue glow dimmed, then brightened again. Darren noticed cracks forming across the surface of the crystal, thin lines spreading outward like frozen rivers. He stepped closer, fear and wonder twisting inside him. "Wait," he said quickly. "If I break this wrong, will it hurt you?" She closed her eyes, her voice faint but steady. "This was never a prison. It was a shield. But the shield is weak now. Your presence gives me strength. Please." Darren pulled out his tools. His hands were steady, though his heart raced. He studied the lines of energy, searching for the right point to release without harm. His mind worked quickly, piecing together patterns of power as if solving an old puzzle. The others might have ignored this place, but Darren's patience, his eye for detail, guided him. With careful movements, he adjusted the flow of energy, placing small devices to redirect the current. The hum of the chamber grew louder, and the cracks deepened. Light flared. The crystal groaned like thunder. Darren shielded his eyes as shards broke away, falling to the ground with a ringing sound. The figure inside stirred, no longer trapped but free. When the last piece fell, the woman collapsed forward. Darren caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was frail, light as air, trembling in his arms. She tried to stand, but her legs gave way. "You're safe," Darren said gently. "It's over." She looked up at him, her silver eyes filled with tears. "Why did you stay?" she asked. Darren hesitated. He had no grand answer, no heroic speech. He simply spoke the truth. "Because no one deserves to cry alone." Her lips trembled, and for the first time in countless years, she smiled faintly through her tears. In that ruined chamber, buried beneath stone and silence, something changed. The city above was still dead, the sky still empty. But in Darren's arms, the last survivor of a forgotten people breathed freely again. Her name, whispered softly between them, was Erin. And though the world above remained broken, hope stirred once more in the shadows below. The air in the chamber felt heavy, filled with the weight of centuries. Erin sat weakly against a broken pillar, her silver hair falling across her shoulders. Her breath was shallow, her body thin from long stasis, yet her eyes were awake now, alive with memories that seemed older than the ruins themselves. Darren knelt nearby, adjusting the small heater he had brought from his pack. The warmth spread slowly, pushing away the chill of the underground. He offered her a flask of water. She hesitated, then took it with trembling hands. The moment the water touched her lips, she drank eagerly, as if her throat had been dry for ages. "Thank you," she whispered when she finished. Darren nodded, watching her carefully. "You're welcome. You should drink slowly. Your body needs time." Erin looked around the chamber, her gaze drifting to the shattered pieces of the crystal that once held her. She touched one shard gently, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she said nothing, then she finally spoke. "This was my cradle of silence. I thought I would never leave it." Darren frowned. "Why were you inside that crystal?" Her eyes lowered. "Because I was the last. My people, they destroyed themselves. I was young, yet I carried the title of princess. When the wars came, my guardians sealed me away. They told me I must sleep, and maybe one day, hope would find me." Her voice shook as she spoke, each word carrying the sorrow of a memory too sharp to forget. But hope never came. The centuries passed. I dreamed, I cried, but no one answered. The city fell, the stars grew silent, and I remained here, alone. Darren sat in silence, letting her words rest between them. He did not rush her, did not press for more than she was ready to share. He simply listened, his eyes steady on hers. When she noticed his patience, her lips curved in a faint, sad smile. "You do not look at me the way others did. You do not see a crown. You only see me." "I see someone who has suffered," Darren said softly. "That's enough reason to care." Her eyes glistened again, though this time not only from sorrow. She studied him as if trying to understand a mystery even greater than the crystal. "Tell me," she asked after a pause, "what has become of the stars? Do empires still rise and fall? Do ships still burn across the skies?" Darren leaned back against the pillar, thinking. The stars are still full of wars. People fight for land, for power, for things they do not truly need. But they also build, explore, and dream. Humans are young compared to the age of your people, but we struggle the same way, failing, learning, trying again. Her brow furrowed. Then nothing has changed. Pride still rules the stars. Maybe, Darren admitted. But sometimes, kindness rules too. It may not be loud, but it exists. That's why I'm here. His words made her chest tighten. For so long, she had believed the universe had forgotten her. But here stood one man, not a soldier, not a conqueror, just an engineer who noticed a faint signal and chose to listen to a voice no one else cared for. "You are strange," she said quietly. Strange, and yet, honest. The silence of the chamber returned, but it no longer felt heavy. It was softer now, as though their voices had warmed it. Erin closed her eyes for a moment, leaning back as if the weight of her story had drained her. Darren watched her carefully, ready to help if she weakened. But when she opened her eyes again, they were brighter, steadier. "I should not be here," she murmured. "I was meant to be a symbol, a promise of what could return. But there is nothing left of my people. No throne. No subjects. Only ruins." "Then maybe you don't have to be a symbol," Darren replied. "Maybe you can just be you." Her lips parted slightly, as if surprised by the thought. She had never imagined such freedom. All her life, she had been the last princess, the burden of memory. But here was a human telling her she could be more than a title. She whispered, almost to herself, "Could I still be someone without the crown?" "Yes," Darren said simply. "You already are." His certainty shook her more than the crumbling of the crystal had. For centuries she had believed she had no worth beyond her title, no reason to exist beyond being a relic of the past. Now, for the first time, she began to see herself not as a forgotten princess, but as a person who still had a future. The sound of the wind above filtered faintly into the chamber, a reminder that the world outside still turned. Erin pulled her robe closer around her shoulders and looked at Darren with a quiet strength returning to her face. "You freed me," she said. "Not because of power, not because of duty. You freed me because you chose to. I will not forget this." Darren shook his head. "I only did what anyone should have done." Erin studied him, and for the first time since she awoke, her tears stopped. The sadness did not vanish, but something new replaced it, hope, small but real. In that forgotten tomb, the last princess of a fallen people and a simple human engineer shared a moment of understanding. She was no longer a relic, no longer only a symbol of sorrow. She was Erin. And beside her stood Darren, the one who had listened when no one else would. It was not the end of her story. It was the beginning. The ruins above lay silent under a pale sky, but silence never lasted long in the galaxy. Even as Erin and Darren sat in the chamber below, other eyes had already turned toward the faint energy signal that pulsed from the old city. Darren's team, who had left him behind earlier, had transmitted their readings to orbit. Ships in nearby sectors had intercepted the signal. To them, the weak but steady power source was no mystery, it was an opportunity. Ancient technology, rare and priceless, often shifted the balance of power. Whoever claimed it could gain weapons, ships, or secrets beyond measure. For Erin, it was a nightmare repeating itself. She felt it first before any machine detected it. A tremor in the air, a faint hum that vibrated through her bones. She lifted her head quickly, her silver eyes narrowing. "They are coming." Darren looked at her, puzzled. "Who?" "Hunters," she whispered. Those who see only what can be taken. The same hunger that destroyed my people still lives in others. Darren pulled out his scanner, and his face tightened. Dozens of signals lit the screen, ships descending through the atmosphere. They were not his team's vessels. These were outsiders, factions that roamed the stars in search of advantage. They'll be here soon, Darren said. Erin's hands clenched around her robe. Memories of burning skies filled her mind, of fleets that once tore through her people's worlds until nothing remained but silence. Her voice shook. If they find me, they will not see a survivor. They will see a weapon. Darren turned toward her. Then we won't let them. Her eyes widened. You do not understand. My knowledge alone could build ships greater than theirs. My blood carries keys to systems long forgotten. To them, I am not a person. I am a prize. If they take me, history will repeat. Worlds will burn again. He knelt in front of her, steady and calm. Then we run. We don't let them decide what you are. You're not a prize. You're not a weapon. You're Aaron. And I'll protect that. For a moment she could not speak. His words carried no hesitation, no calculation, only truth. Her throat tightened, but she nodded. Above, the sky thundered as ships pierced the atmosphere. Dust rained down from the cracks in the ceiling. Darren quickly gathered his tools and helped Aaron stand. She leaned on him, her body still weak from long years in stasis, but her steps grew stronger with every moment. Together they moved through the broken tunnels, guided by Aaron's fading memory of the city. She knew paths hidden deep below, routes her people had built long ago. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed behind them, armored scavengers, searching the ruins with harsh voices and heavy boots. Darren held his breath as they passed through a narrow hall. The light from enemy torches flickered across the walls, shadows stretching long. Aaron leaned close, whispering directions in his ear. Every step was tense, every corner a risk. Finally, they reached a wide chamber where broken statues lined the walls. At the far end stood a sealed arch, its surface marked with faded symbols. Aaron touched the stone gently, and the symbols glowed faintly. This leads to the old hangars, she said. If the ships still sleep, we may escape. Darren examined the arch. It sealed tight. How do we open it? Aaron placed her hand flat on the stone, closing her eyes. The blood of my line was the key. It still remembers. A soft light spread from her palm, and slowly, the arch began to shift. Stones groaned as hidden gears turned, and the path beyond opened with a rush of stale air. But the sound drew attention. Behind them, voices shouted. The scavengers had found their trail. Lights and weapons flashed in the distance. Go, Darren urged. I'll hold them back. Aaron shook her head firmly, gripping his arm. No. You freed me. I will not leave you behind. We go together. They hurried through the arch just as bolts of energy seared the walls around them. Darren pulled Aaron down a side passage, the air filled with the crack of weapons. Dust and shards rained from above. Their footsteps echoed through the tunnels until at last they emerged into a vast chamber. Darren's eyes widened. It was a hangar, carved deep into the planet itself. Old ships rested in silence, their sleek forms coated in dust but still proud in design. Some were broken, their wings snapped, but one stood whole near the center. Its hull shimmered faintly, as if it had waited for this moment. Aaron's voice trembled with awe. This was the Guardian's vessel. It was meant to carry me to safety if the city fell. But I was sealed instead. It has slept as I have. Darren ran his hands across the hull. Can it still fly? With your skill and my memory, Aaron said softly, yes. The shouts of scavengers grew louder behind them. Darren met Aaron's eyes and nodded. Together, they hurried aboard. Dust swirled as the doors sealed shut. Lights flickered to life, systems humming after centuries of silence. Outside, enemy forces stormed into the hangar, weapons raised. But before they could fire, the ship's engines roared. The ground trembled as ancient power awakened. With a surge of light, the vessel lifted into the air, shaking off centuries of dust. Aaron held onto the console, her silver eyes blazing. Darren's hands danced across controls, his calm skill breathing life into the forgotten machine. The scavengers fired wildly, but their shots bounced off the ship's shields. With a deafening boom, the vessel shot upward, breaking through stone and sky, leaving the ruins behind. For the first time in centuries, Aaron felt the air of freedom. The world below shrank as stars opened before them. She looked at Darren, her voice steady now. You kept your word. You would not let them decide what I am. Darren gave a small smile. You're not their prize. You're someone worth saving. And as the ship carried them into the stars, Aaron felt a spark of hope she thought she would never know again. The ship rose higher, shaking as it broke through layers of stone and dust. Ancient engines thundered to life, and blue light streaked across its hull. Darren sat at the controls, his hands steady even though the vessel was older than any machine he had flown. Beside him, Aaron guided with quiet words, her memory unlocking systems that had slept for centuries. For a moment, there was silence, a fragile peace as they left the ruins behind. But the peace shattered quickly. Above the planet, a fleet of scavenger ships circled like predators. Their hulls glimmered with sharp lights, weapons already aimed. They had seen the ancient vessel emerge, and their greed flared brighter than fire. To them, this was not just a ship, it was a prize that could make them rulers of whole sectors. Darren's scanner filled with red signals. Dozens of enemy ships were locking on. He clenched his jaw. They're waiting for us. Aaron's silver eyes narrowed as she studied the stars ahead. They will not let us pass. They will chase until we fall. Then we don't fall, Darren replied firmly. The first wave of scavenger fire streaked toward them. Bright bolts cut through the sky, shaking the vessel as its shields absorbed the impact. The old ship groaned, but it held strong. Dust spilled from the ceiling, and sparks flashed across the panels. Shields at half. Darren shouted, gripping the controls. Aaron placed her hands on the glowing console. Ancient symbols lit under her touch, responding to her as if recognizing their rightful keeper. Energy surged, and the shields brightened again. The ship knows me, she said quietly. It remembers who I am. Good, Darren said. We'll need everything it can give. He pushed the engines forward. The vessel leapt ahead, weaving between enemy fire. The scavengers followed, their smaller ships faster but less durable. They swarmed like a pack of wolves, determined to tear down their prey. The vessel's systems were powerful but old, and many controls were unfamiliar. Darren relied on instinct, guided by Aaron's calm directions. She remembered the design, the secret functions built into the ship. Together, they worked as one. Left corridor ahead. Aaron cried. Darren jerked the controls, and the vessel spun sharply, slipping between two enemy ships. Blinding light filled the cockpit as their attackers' shots struck each other instead. The scavenger vessels exploded in fire, lighting the void. But more closed in. The stars became a battlefield, fire streaking in every direction. The vessel shook under the strain, each hit echoing like thunder. Aaron gripped the console, her voice steady despite the chaos. There is a path, through the asteroid belt. If we reach it, their numbers will mean less. Only skill will matter there. Darren nodded. Then that's where we go. The asteroid belt loomed ahead, a dark river of stone drifting across the stars. To enter it was dangerous. Many pilots had died there, lost among the shifting rocks. But against a swarm of scavengers, it was their only hope. Engines roared as the vessel dove into the field. Massive stones drifted silently, spinning slowly in the black. Enemy ships followed, firing wildly, but the rocks forced them to spread out. Darren guided the vessel between narrow gaps, scraping so close to stone that sparks flew from the hull. His eyes burned with focus, hands moving as if part of the ship itself. Aaron touched the panels again, feeding power to the thrusters whenever the engines lagged. The scavengers tried to follow, but their greed turned against them. Some ships crashed against asteroids, shattering into fire. Others collided with each other in the chaos. The belt became a graveyard, swallowing those who rushed without care. But not all were lost. A group of skilled hunters kept close, matching Darren's maneuvers. They fired relentlessly, forcing him to push harder. "We can't keep this up forever," Darren said through clenched teeth. Aaron looked at the console, her fingers brushing across ancient symbols. "There is one last system. It was meant for defense when all else failed. But it drains the core. If I use it, we may not fly far afterward." Darren glanced at her. "If it keeps us alive, do it." She closed her eyes, pressing both hands firmly on the console. Light surged around her, flowing into the ship as if the vessel itself awakened at her call. Outside, panels opened along the hull. Beams of pure energy shot outward, sweeping across the field. The scavenger ships closest to them were struck. Shields shattered, engines died, and the hunters were thrown into silence one by one. The path cleared, leaving only wreckage floating in the darkness. The ship shook violently as the core dimmed, its power drained. The glow inside the cockpit faded, leaving only the soft hum of tired engines. Aaron fell back in her seat, pale but still awake. "It worked," she whispered. Darren checked the systems. The vessel was weak but still alive. "You saved us," he said firmly. Her eyes met his, filled with exhaustion yet shining with quiet strength. "No," she said softly. "We saved each other." The asteroid belt thinned, opening to clear space. Stars stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time since their escape, no enemy ships followed. Silence returned, but it was not the silence of sorrow anymore. It was the silence of survival, of freedom earned through fire. Aaron leaned back, her silver eyes staring at the stars. For centuries she had been buried and forgotten, but now, against the hunger of scavengers and the weight of fear, she had escaped. She was no longer only the last princess of a fallen people. She was alive, and beside her was the one human who had refused to leave her behind. The ship drifted forward, carrying them into the unknown. Ahead lay danger still, but also something greater: hope. The stars stretched endlessly ahead. The ship glided slowly now, its engines weakened after the desperate flight. Sparks still flickered in some panels, and the hum of the core was faint, like the tired breathing of an old heart. Darren sat at the controls, his hands steady though his face showed exhaustion. Aaron sat beside him, her silver eyes watching the stars with quiet thought. For the first time since her awakening, no one was chasing them. No scavengers. No enemy signals. Only silence and the wide sea of space. But silence could be heavy, too. Aaron rested her hands on her lap, her robe still torn from the escape. She looked down, thinking of what had just happened. "We cannot outrun them forever," she said softly. "The scavengers will not stop. Word will spread. Soon others will come. And when they learn who I am," her voice trailed off. The thought was heavy in her mind. To the galaxy, she was not Aaron. She was a key to forgotten power. Darren glanced at her. "Then we don't tell them who you are. You're not a secret for anyone to use. You're just you." Aaron turned her head slowly, studying him. His words were simple, yet they carried a weight she had never felt from her own people. All her life, she had been a symbol, a princess, a vessel of history. Never simply Aaron. "You speak as if it is easy," she said. It isn't, Darren admitted. But it's still true. For a long time, they sat without speaking. The hum of the ship filled the silence. Darren worked on the controls, trying to coax more power from the weary engines. Aaron watched him, noticing how focused he was. His hands were rough from years of work, but they moved with care, each motion precise. He was not a warrior or a commander, but in his quiet way, he carried strength. At last she asked, "Why do you help me? Why do you care? You could have left with your team. You could have walked away." Darren paused. He leaned back in his seat, staring at the stars. "Because I know what it feels like to be left behind. To be unheard." Her eyes softened. "You." He nodded slowly. "On my world, I wasn't anyone important. I wasn't a soldier, not a leader, not someone others listened to. Most times, I was the one people forgot. But I always noticed things. I listened. That's why I heard you when no one else did." Aaron's breath caught. For centuries, her tears had fallen into silence. Now she understood why this human had answered her cry. He knew loneliness, too. "You remind me of my people," she said gently. "Before the wars, before the pride. We were dreamers. We sang to the stars, we built bridges of light. But then we lost ourselves. We forgot what it meant to listen." Her voice trembled. "I am afraid, Darren. Afraid that if others find me, the cycle will begin again. That my name will bring only fire." Darren looked at her with steady eyes. "You don't have to be afraid alone. I'm here. Whatever comes, we face it together." Her chest tightened at his words. Together. It was a word she had not known for so long. The ship drifted through space, its path lit only by distant suns. Aaron began to share stories. She spoke of her people's music, soft tones that filled the air with color. She told him of great halls where children learned not only war but art, dance, and dreams of peace. Her voice grew warmer as she remembered, though sadness still lingered. Darren listened quietly, asking small questions, encouraging her to continue. He did not press for secrets of weapons or technology. He wanted to know her world, her memories, her life, not what she could give to others. In return, he shared his own stories. He told her about Earth, about oceans wider than cities, forests older than nations, and people who argued yet still laughed together. He admitted Earth had many flaws: wars, greed, mistakes, but it also had hope. Humanity was stubborn. Even in the darkest times, they reached for light. Aaron listened with wide eyes, imagining a world so alive. "It sounds imperfect," she said softly, "but also beautiful." "It is both," Darren agreed. "Maybe that's what makes it worth saving." She smiled faintly. It was the first true smile he had seen from her. The silence that followed was different now. It was no longer heavy. It was gentle, like a soft blanket laid over tired souls. Still, shadows remained in her heart. Late in the cycle, when Darren slept briefly in his chair, Aaron stood alone at the viewport. Her reflection stared back at her, a reminder of who she was: the last princess, the last memory of a fallen people. Could she ever truly escape that? Her hand pressed against the glass. She whispered, almost too faint to hear, "Can I really be more than my crown?" Behind her, Darren stirred. His voice came, low but steady. "Yes. You already are." She turned, startled. He had not been asleep after all. His eyes met hers, and she saw no doubt in them. For a moment, her tears threatened to return. But instead, she let out a soft breath and nodded. That night, in the quiet between stars, trust began to grow, not the forced trust of duty, but the gentle trust of two souls who had both known loneliness and chosen to stand together. And in that fragile bond, Something stronger than fear began to take root. The ship drifted for days across the silent sea of stars. Darren worked to repair what he could, though many systems were beyond his skill. Erin offered what little knowledge she still remembered, but much of the ship's design was strange even to her. Together, they managed to keep it moving, though slowly. But they both knew their time was short. The scavengers would not give up. Sooner or later, others would come, following the trail of whispers about a hidden princess of the old worlds. One evening, as the stars glowed brighter than usual, Darren found Erin at the viewport again. She stood with her hands folded, her face calm but thoughtful. "You are quiet tonight," he said. "I am thinking of choices," she replied softly. "For so long, my path was decided for me. I was buried, forgotten, waiting to be used. But now I see something different. I see that I can choose." Darren stepped closer. "And what do you want to choose?" She turned her silver eyes toward him. "I want to live not as a relic of the past, but as someone who can help build a future. Not a queen, not a symbol. Just Erin." Her words carried a strength he had not heard before. But before Darren could reply, the ship's alarm broke the quiet. A signal flashed on the screen. Enemy ships. 3 of them. They were closing in fast. Darren's jaw tightened. "They've found us." Erin placed a hand on the console. "If they capture us, they will not only take me. They will take the secrets of this ship. They will use it for war." Darren's hands gripped the controls. "Then we don't let them." The ship shook as the first blast struck the hull. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Darren pushed the engines to their limit, but the scavenger ships were faster. Erin steadied herself. "There may be another way. When I was buried, I dreamed of voices. I thought they were memories, but perhaps they were more. This ship is tied to my people. It may still listen to me." Her words carried both fear and hope. Darren looked at her. "If you can reach it, do it. I'll keep us alive until then." The battle began. Darren spun the ship through the dark, dodging blasts that lit the void like fire. His hands moved with calm skill, every motion precise. He was not trained for war, but desperation gave him strength. Meanwhile, Erin closed her eyes. She pressed her hand against the floor of the ship, her lips moving in a quiet chant from her childhood. It was a song her mother once sang, a song of beginnings, of stars being born. The ship trembled. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the panels lit with colors that had been dark for centuries. Energy surged through the core, glowing brighter than before. Darren gasped as new power filled the controls. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." Erin's voice grew louder, her chant rising with courage. The ship responded, shields strengthening, weapons awakening. It was no longer a broken relic. It was alive. The scavenger ships fired again, but their blasts now bounced harmlessly off the shield. Darren grinned as he fired back, beams of light striking the nearest ship. It exploded in a burst of flame. The other 2 tried to flee, but the awakened ship was faster. Darren chased them down, guided by Erin's steady presence. Together, they struck with precision until the final enemy ship was nothing but scattered fragments. Silence returned to the stars. Darren leaned back, breathing heavily. "We did it." Erin opened her eyes slowly. Her body trembled from the effort, but her face shone with peace. "No, Darren. We did not just win a fight. We awakened something greater. This ship is not only a weapon. It is a voice. A bridge. A reminder of what my people once stood for." He turned to her. "And what do you want to do with it now?" Erin looked at the stars, her eyes bright with determination. "I want to share it. Not with those who hunger for power, but with those who dream. I want to carry its light to new worlds, so no one will ever be buried and forgotten again. Darren nodded. Then I'll go with you. Wherever you choose to go. She smiled at him, a smile filled with trust and warmth. Together, then. The ship sailed onward, no longer broken, no longer silent. Its lights glowed like a dawn breaking across the endless night. Aaron stood taller now, not as a forgotten princess but as someone reborn. And beside her stood Darren, the human who had heard her cry and refused to let her fade into darkness. Their journey was far from over. Battles would still come, and dangers would rise. But something stronger than fear guided them now. It was not duty, not bloodline, not destiny. It was choice. And in that choice, a new dawn began not only for Aaron and Darren, but perhaps for the galaxy itself.